You made a decision today. You were certain it was logical, you weighed your options, considered the facts, and chose the most reasonable path forward. But here is the truth that changes everything. That decision was not made by the rational, modern mind you think is in charge. It was made by a brain that is still, at its core, wired for a world that no longer exists. Your brain is ancient. Not metaphorically, literally ancient. The core structures driving your emotions, your fears, your instincts, your snap judgments, they were shaped by millions of years of survival in environments nothing like the one you live in now. And every single day, without you realizing it, that ancient wiring is pulling the strings. So why does this happen? Why can't a brain smart enough to build smartphones and write poetry seem to stop reacting like it is surrounded by predators? The answer goes deeper than most people expect. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it.
The human brain is not one unified system. Neuroscientist Paul MacLean described it through what he called the triune brain model. 3 layers stacked on top of each other, each one built at a different point in evolutionary history. The innermost layer, what MacLean called the reptilian brain, controls your heartbeat, your breathing, your basic drives. It does not think, it just acts. Above that sits the limbic system, sometimes called the mammalian brain, the seat of your emotions, your memories, your sense of threat and reward. And wrapped around both of those is the neocortex, the thin outer layer that handles language, abstract reasoning, planning, and everything you associate with being human. Here is the problem. Those 3 systems do not always agree, and when they conflict, the oldest one usually wins first.
Think about the last time you felt your heart slam against your ribs when someone jumped out and scared you. Your neocortex knew immediately it was a joke, but your limbic system had already flooded your body with adrenaline. Your pupils had dilated, your muscles had tensed. All of that happened in under 200 milliseconds, long before conscious thought could intervene. That reaction has a name. Researchers call it the amygdala hijack, a term coined by psychologist Daniel Goleman in the 1990s. The amygdala is a small, almond-shaped structure buried inside your limbic system, and it functions as your brain's threat detector. It is always on, it is always scanning. And when it decides something is dangerous, it does not wait for your rational mind to weigh in. It bypasses the neocortex entirely and triggers a full-body emergency response in milliseconds.
For your ancestors on the African savanna 200,000 years ago, this was not a flaw. It was a feature. The ones who stopped to think too long when a lion appeared did not survive long enough to pass on their genes. The ones whose amygdala fired first, whose legs were already moving before their brain had time to process the shape in the grass, those are your direct ancestors. You are alive because your lineage was wired to panic first and think later. But you do not live on the savannah anymore. You live in a world of deadlines and social media and traffic jams, and your amygdala cannot tell the difference. A harsh email from your boss triggers the same cascade as a predator sighting. A social rejection activates the same neural circuits as physical pain. This is not a metaphor. Research by Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA using brain imaging showed that social exclusion lights up the same regions of the brain as physical injury. Your ancient wiring does not distinguish between the two. To your brain, being left out of a group chat and being abandoned by your tribe in the wilderness register as the same kind of danger. And this is where it gets stranger. Because the tricks your primal brain plays are not just about fear. They shape almost every judgment you make. Consider the way your brain evaluates risk. Humans are spectacularly bad at calculating probability. You are far more afraid of dying in a plane crash than in a car, even though cars kill vastly more people every year. You feel more fear watching a spider crawl across the floor than you do eating processed food that will statistically take years off your life.
Why? Because your ancient brain was not built for statistics. It was built for pattern recognition. And it was built to weight vivid, memorable, emotionally charged events far more heavily than abstract data. Psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman identified this as the availability heuristic, the tendency to judge how likely something is by how easily an example comes to mind. A plane crash is dramatic. It is terrifying. It gets stored deep. A slow arterial clog from years of poor diet barely registers. One feels like a predator. The other is invisible. And your ancient brain only reacts to what it can see.
This is the same mechanism behind why you cannot stop scrolling through bad news. Your brain was wired to scan for threats constantly. In ancestral environments, ignoring a potential danger could get you killed. Noticing it, even if it turned out to be nothing, cost you very little. So your brain evolved to prioritize negative information. Psychologists call this negativity bias. You feel a single insult more intensely than 5 compliments. You remember criticism longer than praise. You notice threats in the environment before opportunities. And now you have handed that threat-scanning brain a device that delivers an infinite stream of carefully curated bad news 24 hours a day. The result is a nervous system running at a sustained level of alarm it was never designed to handle for this long. But it goes even deeper than fear and risk. Your primal brain is shaping your social behavior in ways you almost certainly do not notice.
Humans evolved as intensely social animals. For the vast majority of human history, belonging to a group was not a preference. It was survival. An individual alone on the savannah was a dead individual. Your brain learned this lesson over hundreds of thousands of years, and it encoded it into the deepest layers of your social psychology. The hunger to belong, to be accepted, to maintain status within a group, these are not preferences you choose. They are survival drives wearing the costume of social anxiety. Social psychologist Henri Tachfel demonstrated in the early 1970s how little it takes to trigger in-group favoritism. In his minimal group experiments, he randomly assigned people to groups based on completely arbitrary criteria, their supposed preference for one painting over another. And within minutes, participants were already favoring their own group over strangers. Not because they had a history together, not because they shared real beliefs, simply because they had been sorted. Your brain does this automatically. It is always categorizing people as in-group or out-group, always calibrating your behavior around social hierarchy, always asking, at some quiet background level, where do I stand, and am I safe here?
This wiring also explains why public speaking ranks among the most common fears on the planet. Standing alone in front of a crowd with all eyes on you maps directly onto a situation your ancient brain recognizes as deeply threatening. Being singled out from the group, being watched, being evaluated. Your nervous system treats it like a predator encounter. The sweating, the racing heart, the trembling hands, those are not signs of weakness. They are your primal brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. Now here is the twist. Knowing about this wiring is not enough to turn it off. You cannot simply decide to stop having an amygdala hijack. You cannot reason your way out of negativity bias in the moment it strikes. The ancient system is faster than thought. But what you can do, and what the research consistently shows works, is learn to recognize the signature of your ancient wiring when it activates.
Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett has argued that emotions are not fixed, hardwired reactions, but predictions. Your brain's best guess about what is happening based on past experience. And crucially, predictions can be updated. When you learn to notice that your amygdala has fired, when you can catch yourself mid-hijack and name what is happening, you create a small gap between stimulus and response. That gap is where your neocortex can step back in. It is thin, it is often hard to hold, but it is real. and it is the closest thing you have to freedom from the ancient wiring running underneath. Your brain is extraordinary. It wrote the symphonies and the theorems. It mapped the genome and landed spacecraft on other worlds. But it did all of that with hardware that spent its formative years dodging predators and calculating the safest spot in a social hierarchy. Every time you flinch at a shadow, every time you check your likes before you check your email, every time you feel your chest tighten before a performance, you are not broken. You are ancient. You are running millions of years of survival code in a world that arrived yesterday. And the next time you make a decision you were absolutely certain was rational, you might want to ask which part of your brain was really in the driver's seat.